Happy New Year. Here we are. It is the year of 2026, a whole new year ahead of us. And we went through the football games, we went through the ball drop in New York City on Times Square, and all the people have been out there. And you start looking at some of the pain that people went through. It's like, why in the world did you do this? But anyway, that's beside the point. Cheryl and I decided that, hey, that ain't for us. Josh, would you go watch that ball up there?
No, not
No,
for me either.
no, not just going in there and standing in a corral and having to wear a diaper just don't fit my lifestyle at all anymore, man. I tell you.
I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, I've seen there's been a lot of videos on that. But anyway, here we go into a new year. And that means it's time to establish what is your strategic plan for the coming year. What's on your mind? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So here's the first thing I want to bring up with this. You got to start with the truth. Planning fails when it skips reality. So here's some questions to ask yourself to get into your strategic planning for 2026. What actually drove results for you in 2025? What did you do that didn't perform well, that simply drained your energy? What things in the last year surprised you, either good or bad? And to come up with this, you need to be looking at the following things. You're using your financials, your revenue, your margin, your cash. What's your customer data say? Did you have wins? Did you have losses? Did you have complaints? How about your operational data, your capacity, your bottlenecks? You cannot build a future plan that can survive denial of the past. So before you can do that, to start your strategic plan, you got to ask yourself those questions. What drove your results last year? What underperformed, drained your energy, and what surprised you? So, Cheryl, what would you add to what I've just said here?
I know we're looking at just the year coming, but my first question to people would be to ask, what do I want to look like in 3 to 5 years? We're planning for 26, but if you're going to plan, set yourself up for progressiveness by looking where you want to be. And you've got to check where you've been, but you also need to know where you want to go. I find that to be a problem with most people. They want to go from here to here, and they don't want to worry about where they're going past that.
Got you covered. I understand. And Happy New Year to you, Brett. Appreciate you joining us today. So, Josh, what about you? What's on your mind from the things I just said?
Budget. That's going to be my biggest thing for this year is setting a budget. And from the budget, you can derive a lot of things like how much money you really need to survive, every month. That's something I'm having conversation with on a regular is, okay, what do we actually need to make every month? And going through that process can be a little painful, but you as the owner say I need $15,000 in my pocket. So just from there alone, you say, okay, well, I need $60,000 in sales, between profit and all the other expenses that happen to go along with that in order to kind of break even. So then you can really start to stress above them, if you hit below that and things like that. Those are some of the tidbits I have right this second.
Yeah. So here's some more questions I want to throw out. How do we grow profit without getting more complex? It seems like this world of business today is just getting more and more complex. AI is coming in more and more. And if you want to scale, how do you do this without burning out your team members? What do we double down on? What do we decide that's really working and we do more of it and do it better? And there's a big one. What things do we stop doing? What do we stop doing? Sometimes you got to make a decision what not to do anymore instead of just what you're going to do. These things are going to become your lens for every decision that you make. So, Cheryl, what's your thoughts on what I just said?
Well, I think people look more at something new to do instead of something to quit because they assume the one that they're quitting was the one that kind of held them up. But I think that's where the mindset has got to be into the forward mode instead of trying to deal with the things that didn't work. Find some new stuff. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there in the world now. I know the chimney service industry does so much training on business and stuff. So look at what worked for you, look at what didn't work for you, but also take a side glance and look at what's working for other people that you might can implement.
Okay. Josh, what would you add on that?
You said something very interesting. Products and services you should add or remove. That is a big one because, when we sold spas and patio furniture, especially patio furniture, we had to look at it and said, okay, we had a buying agent that costs X number of dollars a year and sales are this. And then I realized, okay, if I get rid of the buying agent and the pet outdoor furniture category, I'll have more money in my pocket. So if you have products or services or divisions that aren't making money, do we should or get off the pot? Look at that and said, okay, if I just got rid of this altogether, will I have less frustrations? If let's just say we had a drain cleaning division that wasn't making any money and it was the bane of my existence, but we felt like we had to have it as part of being full service. What is that really costing you? I know oil companies used to have a service department that always cost them money because they were always interested in the gallons. No, that's kind of changed a little bit. The service companies are making more money for these oil companies, but it used to be a service loser, so they could just keep selling more oil.
Yeah. And again, I think one of the biggest things you got to look at going into next year is what you will stop doing. Because a lot of times we're going to find that we have certain services, customers, or habits that dilute our focus. What are we really good at? And what should we keep doing? And what is bringing us profit in each and every day? What will free up the most capacity if we stopped? You got to write all these things down and you got to establish your priorities. But as you establish your priorities, you've also got to establish what your annual objectives are. So let's keep it simple. So many people list so many things, they just can't get it all done. It becomes overwhelming. And I see a lot of people, and that's what happens. It becomes overwhelming. And also a lot of times it produces burnout. People just decide they can't do this anymore. So, put your annual objectives together. What are your objectives and how are you going to measure them? You got to set and establish what's your success metrics. Always remember, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Cheryl, what's your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, I'm looking back at when we used to make a mind board on things where things were written out. I think a lot of the problem with people nowadays, they try to work it out in their mind. And your mind's not functioning to think about it all the time. So it needs to be put on paper because if you get it onto a piece of paper, then you can let that little section go and move to another. When it's all on the paper, then it's like a puzzle. You work it out. Good, bad, keep, go. And I don't know if people are afraid to write it down because they're afraid they will, they won't get it done. But I think that's my thing. That's how we wrote books. That's how we've done things. We got our thoughts down on paper before we started to do the finale work.
So what you're talking about is the mind mapping that we've taught many times in classes. Am I correct on that?
I think that's great because you can have a pro side, a con side. We did this well, we sucked at this, and then branch off. And once you get it laid out like a puzzle, you've got a picture. That's what a puzzle is. A puzzle is a bunch of pieces that makes up a picture that makes common sense. and tells our mind exactly what that's a picture of. And to me, that's Cheryl, and it's just my opinion. I use that to get a lot of my thoughts out to where I need to do. It's just, it's relieving to me because I can get it written down. I can see it. You mark it out if it doesn't work, you move it instead of doing something physical that's going to cost you money to undo.
Okay. Josh, what about you? Got anything to add there?
Well, I was going to bring up your favorite topic, SWOT analysis. That's always a good thing to be doing right now as you get your plan together to figure out, and it's same as that mind mapping, figure out what our strengths and weaknesses are so we can either, fix them, move on from them, forget them, build on them. That's a good time, especially now's a good time. Everybody's kind of refreshed after the holiday. So hopefully they're not as gripey and bitchy as they are mid-season.
Yep. And the amazing thing, we're setting up SWAT meetings right now at various locations around the country. I got one on Monday of next week, but some of them, we're actually developing a process now, which is like a second level of SWAT, looking at it from a different angle, getting people's minds to open up more and more during these SWAT meetings. And those of you who don't know what a SWAT is, that's where we go over and review what are the strengths of your company? What are the weaknesses of your company? What's the opportunities out there? And what are the threats to the company? These are all things that you need to keep in mind. Okay. But you've got to be able to put it all together. And you got to ask some really hard questions. What assumptions are we making that must be true for this to work? What could derail us? Where are we most exposed? Those are all deep questions you got to look at it yourself. And you got to set up your reviews of your metrics. How are you going to measure this? And what's the metrics you're going to measure it to? A strategic plan is a living system. It's not just a once a year event. You've got to be able to sit down, talk about it, and be able to measure what your progress has been over the quarter or the week or however you're going to set up that you review what your process is in this and what your progress is. Cheryl, any thoughts on that?
This is a time in everyone's life when they're doing this that they need total transparency and to be able to draw from other people and put their ideas in. And I sometimes think a lot of times we hold stuff too close to the vest. And with the SWOT and so much going on out there, people need to have some feedback. And I'm like you, I like the SWOTs too, because you can see what other people are thinking. And we've been amazed in our time that you've done these, that a lot of times the employees have some really good ideas.
Yeah. Josh, what about you?
I would say during SWOT analysis, if you're hot-headed, be prepared to shut up. Maybe take a Xanax before.
Or stay in the other room like I had one guy do one time.
You mean me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I got better a second time around.
Yeah, you did better the second time around. But anyway, I had a conversation with a very educated individual the other day, and we were talking about his strategic plan for 2026, putting together what we were going to do and how we were going to move forward. He came up with one of the most interesting 2 words that I could ever imagine. And he said, this is what often happens. The people that work for us have information constipation. Information constipation. They know the answers. They just can't get it out. They just can't express the words. And that's where getting your people to talk, like I said, maybe you got to take a Xanax to listen to it. But are your members of your team, are they afflicted with information constipation? Cheryl, what do you think about information constipation?
I like that. That's one of the coolest ways to put it, but it's true. The thing is, you've got to get it out, or it'll blow you up. So I think you need to work with that one just a little bit, Father. I really do. I think you need to pass that one out to your clients.
Yep. Great words of putting it all together. Josh, what do you think about information constipation? You ever seen people had that affliction?
That's interesting. I've seen people have the answers, but just not use the tools or their brains, really the tools to figure it out.
So they had no laxative?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I had lots of tools available, and they still wouldn't use them.
Yep, that's very, very true. So again, this is another one you need to work on in the coming year. Make this part of your strategic plan. How are you going to obtain buy-in and an ownership mentality from the people that are on your team? How do you get your team members to buy in and think like owners? Cheryl, where do you think that is?
I think that calls for, as I talked about just a little earlier, I think that calls for transparency. It calls for letting them be in on some of the discussions and explain it to them in the language that works for them. A lot of times we've pulled language from other people that have words. I mean, you go to a doctor, half the time you can't understand him. So are the employers explaining it in the words that a person can understand? Again, communication.
Okay. Josh, what about you?
I've definitely seen that, because even my systems, I've seen it's clear to me, and then it's obvious, then it's not clear to the person you're training. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's right in front of you. So that's been the nice thing about like the Chat GPT and things like that. It helps clear up some of your written language, because I tend to write in a short bullet pointed format. And apparently it's not descriptive enough.
And sometimes the words we use are just not recognized by others. We may be using geographic terms they've never grown up with. So we got to put the plan together and get everybody on the team communicating. So here's our end thought on this today. Spend some time going into the new year of how and what your strategic plan is going to be. Don't make it super complicated. When you get it too complicated, it's just not going to work. Josh, you ever have people that take on Service Titan and it's just too complicated for them to do?
I saw somebody on Facebook cursing them out the other day.
Every day you see that on that. Yep. Because it is a complicated system. It's not a plug and play software by any stretch or means of the thing. And once you've committed for it, you're committed. You are committed to it. There's no getting out of it. So Cheryl, anything you would add in before we end out today's episode?
Just get the right people on your team. Usually if you've got a disgruntled employee, it might be because you've got someone that's leading them that's not the right person. So look at your people, look at your systems, look at everything very well, because again, it's a puzzle. If you mess up one piece, the picture's not gonna be the same.
That's it. And with that, we're going to end this episode. As always, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure. And if we here at CVC Success Group, if we can help you put together your strategic plan, let's have a conversation. That's where it all starts. We're easy to talk to. We'd love to hear from you. You can see our email addresses are all up on the screen. Reach out to us. Let's set up a conversation. Let's see if we can help you make 2026 a year that will move it closer and closer to your goal destination. And with that, we'll see you next week on our next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Have a fantastic weekend ahead and a week ahead.